Hey, my dudes. I wanted to say never date a schizophrenic. Schizophrenics are easy. They'll date anybody. They're constantly looking for new hookups. They're promiscuous as hell. They're unreliable. They're completely out of their mind. And it's a huge red flag. And sometimes they're kind of like normal women where they'll not really reveal themselves for a few months. So they'll be able to hold in their craziness, their complete schizo crap for a few months, and then they start telling you stories about all the people that they abused and all the relationships they've been in and all the trauma and damage they've done in the past. And you're like, oh my God, I'm next, you know. But if it's not even about like low self-esteem or desperate, it's like, well, I guess it kind of is. I would say desperation more than anything is the number one reason why people would stay in such relationships like that. Because you're like, oh, maybe I'll find somebody else or something, but for the time being, this whacked out schizo is keeping me company, and so I'm not alone. But quickly, and I mean very quickly, they start really causing problems, really doing a lot of damage, and you got to get out of there. The crazy really starts to come out, and again, they don't have any loyalty. They will throw you out for some random person that they see on the street, and you don't want to be around them for long, because when they get bored of you, they will treat you like you're a stranger and some random person on the street like they're the next best thing. It's kind of like narcissism, where they're feeding for supply, narcissistic supply, where they're only thinking about themselves. So a lot of times these types of schizo women will end up having kids, and then somebody else is going to have to raise the kids, because again, they don't give a crap. They don't give a crap about the kids. They're out of their mind. They're crazy as crap. And what most of the time happens is they just get worse and worse as time goes on. They completely fall apart. They're almost like alley cats, or outdoor cats. Over time they just get torn up. They get all screwed up. They're doing drugs. They're getting run over. People are using them left and right. They're getting in all sorts of problems, and you're like, damn. And some people are stupid enough that like they let it affect them. They're like, oh, I wasn't good enough, or they try to get self-esteem from people that just don't care about you. And even if they're not schizophrenic, there's a lot of women that just use men, and they use people around them. And if you're trying to get validation from those types of people, like, oh, I'm just not good enough, they may even put you down, talk crap about you, to make you feel insecure or like you're not good enough. And it's like, oh no. You watch them long enough, and the next thing you know, they're single mothers, and they have a long trail of men they screwed over, and they don't even have to be schizophrenics. That's the thing. There's women that just, they're very self-centered. They don't even have to be narcissistic, really. A lot of them, they're just using people. It's called like monkey branching, or that's like a big thing in the men's movements, where they think a lot of women, they'll leave men when it's no longer comfortable, and they just want to find somebody else to make their lives easier. So there's all types of people out there, but like schizophrenics are like, I think they're a good example of how to really see relationships and stuff. And I think if you get in a good, healthy, supportive relationship, it's really nice, to have somebody there for you that really, gets you up in the morning, makes you more productive and happy, and does things with you and keeps you company. It's really nice. But my God, if you get with a lot of these toxic women, You know, it can really screw you up, especially if you grew up in a normal household. You know, a lot of people, they went to high school, they went to college, they had a normal family, and then you come across these freaking nutcase women that are just using people, that are extremely self-centered, that may be extremely mentally ill, and you're just like, this is not how it's supposed to be. You know, what are you getting from this? What's going on? You know, and you know, you start thinking like, yeah, maybe it's me. You know, maybe I'm causing this person to throw me out because I'm just not good enough for them. You know, but again, you watch them long enough, and it's usually what happens is they're single mothers with a bunch of bastard babies, and or like they don't even take care of their own bastard babies, and you're like, damn, you know, that could have been me. That could have been me. You know, people don't teach you about this stuff. They should teach you this stuff. Somebody should teach people this stuff, because you know, it's no good. It's no good, my dudes.